Okay, let's start off with our lesson today. Okay, let's start with our lesson today. Okay, can we look at the worksheet that was given to you during the previous lesson? Now, we were already talking about a Kennedy's view on the Bay of Pigs. During the last lesson, we were talking about how the two powers seized this whole event, the Bay of Pigs incident. Okay, this was Kennedy's letter to Khrushchev. Now, can you look at this letter very quickly? All of you should have this letter in your worksheet itself. Can you look at this letter and tell me what was Kennedy's point of view with regards to the Bay of Pigs? Okay, so what I'm interested in is that I'm interested in knowing Kennedy's point of view. Okay, his point of view, and what is American stand on this Bay of Pigs incident, or at least with Cuba becoming a communist country. Anybody? 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 What was Kennedy's point of view about the Bay of Pigs? Okay, first of all, he says that people, or the Cubans, okay, were not what? Okay, they are not given their freedom to choose their government. In this case, this whole concept of self-determination. So he mentioned that they were not given any opportunity for self-determination. How do you know that? What was mentioned here? Okay, so he mentioned about the refugee running away, right? More than about 100,000 refugees were running away. Other than that, what other thing was his point of view? What was his point of view? Other than the refugees were not given a choice of government, what was his other point of view? He wanted, that was, okay, is that Kennedy's point of view, or is that American stand towards this issue? American stand. Okay, so let's ask about the point of view. What was he, how did he perceive this whole Bay of Pigs incident? Communism spreading. Huh? Not so much about communism spreading. He was emphasizing a lot of this idea of self-determination, right? That means that the people were not given the right to do so. Other than that, how did he criticize Khrushchev? What did he say about Khrushchev? Did he mention something about Khrushchev? He made a first statement, you are under a serious misapprehension. What does misapprehension mean? That means misunderstanding. That means he's telling you, hey, hello, you got this wrong. You got this wrong. You think that the people wanted Castro, but you are wrong. Why are you wrong? Because they wanted freedom. How do I know they wanted freedom? Because there are 100,000 people who run away from Cuba. So that's very obvious, they wanted freedom. But of course, we didn't count the mathematics itself, 100,000 over a few million population. That is only a very small proportion. But he mentioned that there was about 100,000. What other things were they saying? What did he say? Other than the fact that the Cubans were not given the chance for self-determination, what does he say about Americans' involvement? Did he say anything about Americans' involvement? Yes or no? Yes, madam. Yes, it was not him who initiated it. Very good. Did he hint that I give them guns, I give them everything? Yes. He didn't say anything. If you look carefully, he did not say anything about the guns and everything. He just mentioned that this group of people have been deprived of freedom. They are fighting for their freedom. And I think it's perfectly legitimate for them to do so. So there was no hint about American involvement. So Kennedy's point of view was that this was actually a people's revolution. Okay, it was a people's revolution, and versus the accusation that it was an American initiative. Okay, this was the point that I was trying to say, that it has nothing to do with the American. So he's trying to take the American picture in the equation away. Okay, he's trying to remove US from the equation. Now, what is the American point of view about this whole idea of Castro staying at the government? Okay, so we have Kennedy's point of view. Let's look at the US point. Okay, what was the American perception about this whole entire incident? What do you think? How do they feel about communism lying in Cuba? Okay, Khrushchev was very certain. If the American, if you remember during our previous lesson, if the American were to do anything to threaten the power, what would they do? They will defend Cuba, right? They will defend, they'll send in troops. What about the American? What about the American? What is the American trying to take in rebuttal of Khrushchev's claim and assertion? It got nothing to do with them. First of all, he's trying to tell Khrushchev, when you get yourself involved, it has nothing. This thing is your own problem. What you believe is your own problem. What it does to the world is the world's problem. So he's trying to say that this communism problem is a world problem. So his belief is that this communism is a world problem. And if it's a world problem, what does it mean? It implies that the US will get involved. Because the US is supposedly the leaders of the world. So, in a nutshell, what he had actually done is that first, he claims that the people didn't want Castro. That was one thing. He's telling Khrushchev, I think you got your facts wrong. So Kennedy was trying to explain to Khrushchev. Okay? And then he mentions about the Americans coming in to help them because the Americans believe in the idea of self-determination. If people are denied the right to choose, then the recourse into this struggle is recourse to such is the only way to solve their problem, to get back their freedom. So he actually standing on the side of the rebels and said it's perfectly okay for the rebels to be there. So that means that he's actually on the side of the rebels, saying that it's perfectly okay for them to fight for power. Notice a very interesting situation, right? Nobody knows whether they enjoyed the previous dictatorship by Batista. But yet, in this case, he said it is perfectly alright for them to come in and overthrow the communist government. Very interesting situation. Okay? So what you see over here is an example of how the American perceives the whole entire situation. Okay? Okay? We do not, the free people do not accept the claim of historical inevitability for communist revolution. Meaning, you cannot say that, oh, the communists, because they are unhappy, they decided to start a revolution, they overthrow the government. That is wrong. It's not the right thing of self-determination. So, Khrushchev's point of view that Cuba has done the right thing is, in the eyes of the Americans, wrong. Very interesting point of view because they all have their own perception and perspective about this way of things. Okay, so this was what we mentioned about Kennedy's point of view. Okay, are we clear about this so far? So you could see that both sides are asserting their own point of view and they are trying their very best to try to convince both sides that what they have done is wrong. Okay, so if I were to summarize, the viewpoint that was mentioned here. First thing, this was the point of view of the Soviet and the American. So in a nutshell, The Soviets believed that whatever the Americans are doing is not consistent with their idea of self-determination. You say, let the people choose their government. You say that it's perfectly logical for them to go against if they want to change the government. But when a communist regime do that, it is wrong. Can you see the irony of this whole thing? You can do it if you are a democratic government. You want to overthrow government, I will support you. But if a communist wants to overthrow a government, sorry, you are wrong. This is what we call different yardstick or in terms of the kind of respect in that sense. The next thing is that the Soviets believe that they need to go in and protect Cuba, which is why you notice that Khrushchev immediately stepped in and say that if their friend is being threatened, rest assured they will come in and support them, which they did, which you are going to learn in a short while. The next thing is that Americans perceived that Castro was actually a very unpopular government. On top of that, the way that they take away power was illegitimate, which is again the irony that I'm talking about. If a democratic government was to overthrow Castro government, it's okay. But the other way around is not okay. This is what we call double standard, correct? This is double standard. They need to also ensure that there is self-determination and to protect the West from communists and Hitler, which is why the Americans see it as their responsibility to get involved in this incident. So, very interestingly, while they claim that they were not responsible for the Bay of Pigs, the Americans hinted that they will come in and do something about it. So can you see that whole entire contradiction that was going on? Okay? Any questions so far? Now, we are finally going to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so you already see the context already, how the two powers come into play. Now we are going to look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, I believe some of you have already read up on the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm not going to spend a lot of time asking you to look through that the whole entire document of the worksheet. But what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to give you a lesson on the Cuban Missile Crisis so that it will help you to answer the question that you see on the left. Okay. Now we're going to look at act number 5. Okay, now we're going to look at act number 5. Okay, what is this act number 5 all about? Matthew, are you okay? Okay, let's look at act number 5 now. Okay, first of all, to understand act number 5, you need to understand the situation. So the story that we have so far is this. In 1961, Castro was threatened by the Bay of Pigs. Although they failed to destroy Castro, Castro was threatened by the very fact that the Americans didn't like them. And therefore they sought for a closer ally with the Russians. And the Russians decided to help them by giving them weapons. Okay, so that's how the story actually started. Now, first of all, what was the things that was being shown? This was the thing that was being shown. So it ended up in a crisis called the October 14 to 28. There's about 14 days, or in fact 13 days. That's why it's called the 13-day crisis. 13-day crisis happened in October 14 to 28 in 1962. That resulted to the end of the whole entire incident in 1962, November 20th. But during that 13 days of event, from 14 to the 28, there was a lot of tense relationship that almost culminated to World War II. Okay? First of all, what actually happened? The Russians have been very busy trying to show the world that they are now one of the superpowers after the Second World War. During some of those commemoration of Lenin's birthday, something like a little bit like their National Day, they started to present things like this. Okay? On one of the events, you have the mid-range ballistic missile, MRBM. Okay? It's known as the SS-4 Sentinel. Okay, this thing was the American had details of it because they actually openly display it like our National Day in Singapore. They bring all our weapons to show off to the world for what we have. Now this weapon was actually a very, very powerful nuclear weapon. This weapon has the equivalent of a megaton warhead. That means that he is able to hold on to explosive of about 3 megaton. How much is 3 megaton? Imagine the whole entire World War II, from Europe, Hitler, all the way to Japan. If you add up all the ammunition, bombs, and everything, you add them up together with the 2 bombs, which is the fat man and little boy. Okay, if you put all these weapons together, it's equivalent to 1 of this. Over that 4 years of war, imagine all the ammunition that was being fired, all the bombs that was being dropped, and you put on the 2 atomic bombs, it is equivalent to 1 of this. Okay, so you can understand how powerful this weapon is. Okay, it's equivalent to 1 bomb. What you see is 3 or 4 years is equivalent to 1 bomb. Now, what is this bomb all about? Okay, the incident happened, okay, when they realized that there was a ship, okay, from the Soviet traveling towards the direction. There were many ships traveling, supposedly carrying equipment, moving towards Cuba from the Soviet Union, somewhere around October 1962 period. Okay, and there was also another. Okay, so this is an example of the ship that was taken from the plane, which is called the U-2 plane. Okay, the U-2 is a surveillance plane. Now, another thing that was also happening was that they actually saw this. The Americans flown some hidden U-2 plane over the territory of Cuba, and the plane actually took all these pictures. When they took all these pictures and the American intelligence take a look at this, they started to get worried, because it is very obvious they are planning a missile launching site. Okay, so you can see that this was a missile erector, the cable, and this was the tank trailers and so on and so forth. Then they discovered that they are actually creating missiles for the country. Okay, so that was when the Americans started to panic, and that was when Kennedy come into the picture. Okay, another picture here. This was a closer picture. So this is where they actually have the missile trailer, they have the ramps here, they have the wall here, they have the launchers here. All these are ready to go. That means that the Cubans are ready to have their missile fire at the Americans. Now, when they realized that the weapon that they had was the SS Sandal, the one that I showed you, the 3 megaton. They also had their specification. They know that the weapon itself can hit a range from Cuba. It can reach a range of almost about 22,000 nautical miles. That means that on the so-called radius, it can hit around 22,000 or 2,200 nautical miles. And when they draw a circle, they realize that it can hit very important city in America. San Francisco, Washington DC. Can you see the situation now? Okay, so the Americans realize that when the weapons are fully ready and activated, they can hit San Francisco, they can hit Washington. And the effect will be even worse than when the Americans dropped the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, so that was the situation at that time. Now, this was what you see over there. Okay, now this is where the missile is. So just a clearer picture from where it is. For about 2,200 nautical miles is about a total of 4,000 kilometers, which means that from Cuba you can hit San Francisco. The only city that is safe is Seattle, because they are right in it. But the rest of all these cities, all the way to Canada, can be destroyed by the Cuban weapon. Okay, so this is what we call your intermediate or your middle range ballistic missile. Okay, are we clear on this so far? Now, this was Cuba's situation. Okay, this was Cuba and the American situation. So, with all this information at hand, okay, just to summarize what I've been telling you so far, okay, this is what happened. Okay, it all started on the 14th of October. Remember I told you 13 days, right? 14th October, a US spy plane went over and they suspected that there was a USSR military missile site on Cuba. Okay, if you have this, it's actually found on your notes, so not to worry about it. And according to the expert, they will be ready in 7 days. That means 7 days later, the weapons will be fully ready to fire. And on top of that, there were also 20 Soviet ships. That's why you notice the Soviet ships, right? They were also bounded for Cuba, and they were all supposedly carrying missiles. So that means that they are carrying the parts of the SS Sandal, the missile that was going to be launched and used to be destroying the Americans. Okay, so that was the situation at that point of time. Now, with that in mind, Kennedy will have to do something about it. Okay, Kennedy will have to do something about it. So what will Kennedy have to do? Okay, Kennedy was told by his advisor, okay, looking at the situation now, okay, you have 10 days. 10 days before the weapon is fully operational, and you have to do something about it. 7 days, 7 to 10 days. Okay, 7 to 10 days. Okay, they have about 7 to 10 days for them to react to the situation. Why? Sometimes they say 7, sometimes they say 10. 10 to 14 is the duration. But if the Soviet decided to work harder and faster, they can actually get it up by 7 days. Which means that the Americans have to react in 7 days time. If not, then once the missiles are ready, we do not know where they are going to fire. See the situation so far? Okay, so that is the Cuban Missile crisis. Okay, now we have a problem. Okay, now we have a problem. So Kennedy was told all this information. So what will Kennedy want to do about it? Okay, what will Kennedy want to do about all these things? Now that he knows that the weapon, once operational, can actually hit almost any city in America. So Kennedy decided that he's going to do something about it. Okay? What he's planning to do is that he wanted to come out with something called a, okay, he wants to make sure that at this point of time, okay, Cuba will not be able to threaten the Americans. Okay, he has to do something to prevent Cuba from threatening America. So what is it that he wants them to do? Okay, now I'm going to show you a video. Okay, I'm going to show you a video. This video is from this movie called 13 Days. Okay, it's a very old movie, almost about 15 years ago. Okay, starring Kevin Costner. What I'm going to show you is a very interesting and a reenactment, really a reenactment of what was happening during the White House meeting in 1962, when John F. Kennedy was given the various options. What I need you to do very simple. If you look at your worksheet, on the second page of your worksheet, okay, the second page of your worksheet, there is actually a couple of responses. Okay, I'm going to ask you to pay attention to the video and see what are the possible responses that Kennedy could adopt and what are the repercussions. Then you will see what was the thing that Kennedy done during the Cuban Missile crisis. Okay, so I want you to pay attention. It's only about 3 minutes. I want you to pay attention to the video. Okay, so this is John F. Kennedy.
Things for the week, Mr. President. Mr. President, CIA has been notified. Holmes on his way back from the West Coast. He's been burying his stepson. General Carter's here, though. Okay. What's that? Wow. Gentlemen, as most of you now know, a U-2 over Cuba Sunday morning, a series of disturbing photographs. Our analysis indicates that the Soviet Union has followed up its conventional weapons build-up in Cuba with the introduction of surface-to-surface, medium-range ballistic missiles, or MRBMs. Our official estimate at this time is that this missile system is the SS-4 Sandal. We do not believe that the missiles are as yet operational. Iron Bar reports that the SS-4 can deliver a 3 megaton nuclear weapon 1,000 miles. So far, we've identified 32 missiles serviced by about 3,400 men, undoubtedly all Soviet personnel. Cities and military installations in the southeast, as far north as Washington, D.C., are in range of these weapons, and in the event of a launch, we have only 5 minutes of warning. 5 minutes, gentlemen. In those 5 minutes, we could kill 80 million Americans and destroy a significant percentage of our bomber bases, creating our retaliatory options. The Joint Chiefs consensus, Mr. President, is that this signals a major doctrinal shift in Soviet thinking to a first strike policy. It is a massively destabilizing move. How long into their operation? General Taylor can answer that question better. The GMAC, Guided Missiles Intelligence Committee, estimates 10 to 14 days. The crash program could limit that time. However, I must stress that there may be more missiles that we don't know about. We need more U-2 coverage.
Gentlemen, I want first reactions here. Assuming for the moment Khrushchev is not going off the deep end and intends to start World War III, what are we looking at?
Mr. President, my team is in agreement. If we permit the introduction of nuclear missiles to a Soviet satellite nation in our hemisphere, the diplomatic consequences will be terrible to contemplate. The Russians are trying to show the world they can do whatever they want, wherever they want, and we're powerless to stop them. They succeeded.
It'll be Munich all over again.
Peace only makes the aggressor more aggressive. And the Soviets will be emboldened to push us even harder. Now, we must remove the missiles one way or another. Now, to me, the options are either some combination of international pressure and action on our part to radio in, or we hit them in an airstrike.
We worked up several military scenarios. Before I ask General Taylor to take us through the various options, I'd like for us to adopt a rule. If we decide to strike, we must agree now to do it before the missiles become operational. Because once they are, I don't think we can guarantee getting them all before at least some of them launch.
It's clear that we cannot permit the Soviet nuclear missiles to keep. We have to get those missiles out.
Okay. I just wanted a short video, just as a teaser for all of you. Is it very interesting? Yeah, interesting. Okay. First of all, what's the impact of the weapon? How many people? Of course, people died. We're talking about 80 million people died. 80 million. Okay. How many reaction time do you have? It is the same as we have if we have a fire drill. Just imagine us. Imagine you're not in America at this point of time during the Cuban Missile crisis. In the event that boom, you only have about 5 minutes. Okay, you only have about 5 minutes to react. 5 minutes to react meaning there is absolutely nothing you can do except to. Am I right to say that if the missile is coming at your direction, unless you are very, very lucky, if not, then 5 minutes is just enough for you to. When you see the repercussion of it, you know now why the Americans are so worried. You understand why the Americans are so worried? Good. Now, in the video itself, they recommended a couple of strategies. Right? They recommended a couple of strategies. This is what I want you to do. There are a few blanks out there. You may have written some strategy, but what I want you to do is very simple. I want you to think through what you have watched just now. Think through what are some of the ways that we can try to resolve this problem. Okay? What we can resolve this problem, and what are the possible repercussions. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do so. read through, okay, think about the solution that being proposed, what are the things that we can do to prevent a situation like this from escalating, and what are the possible implications. The first one has already been written down for you, so I just need you to put on the second or the third one. Okay, I want you to come up with as much ingenious solution as possible, and we will see what Kennedy do. The textbook got? There are six different strategies, right? But I don't want you to look at your textbook. I ask you to look at I ask you to use your creativity and think. Okay, time on the clock is 1:35, 1:30. We'll have a quick discussion. That means that it's not totally socialist. That's what okay, so it's no longer, it's not a democratic country, but they are no longer a transmitter from because by the time the rulers we realize that this is what we are at the end of the 90s. And since a lot of you are not working on the question itself, okay, either you're waiting for answers or you're waiting for me to provide you with the solution. Now, I want to explain to you why is it that this exercise is very important. Because we always have to understand in history there is always a context. So sometimes when we understand, when we want to ask you about soft-based question, we always ask you what is the purpose, what is the intention. You always have to think through it from the person's point of view. Okay? And why is it that he wants to do certain things? Now the first thing that I want to bring to your attention is let's look at the possible strategy. Now, just now, if you watch that very short 3-minute clip, the whole entire White House was seated together and they were trying to give solution for Kennedy. what were mostly the solution? We were talking about airstrike, right? Okay, so one of the possible strategy that we were talking about is to carry out the airstrike. Now, what is the situation when you do something like this? That means you go in, you blow up whatever that you have over the Cuban Missile. The minute you start bombing another country, what does it mean? So it means that it's equivalent to an act of war. And if it's equivalent to act of war, it will mean that who will come in to support Cuba? So the Soviet Union, okay, the Soviet USSR will support, okay, they will support Cuba. When they support Cuba, okay, against the American, okay, it will imply that this will lead to World War III. Correct? It will lead to World War III. Very straightforward. And when you have World War III, World War II already there were a lot of people dying, killed in the process. If you do that, this will lead to World War III. My question to you is that if you are Kennedy, would you want to visit? Do you want to be the one, do you want to be the person in history that was told you are the president who started? No, Kennedy doesn't want that. Okay, so Kennedy doesn't want that. So this option was not the option that he wanted to choose at the end of it. What other possible options are there available? Okay, they can have, you mentioned something about peace. Okay, we try to have some form of peace settlement. Okay, now peace settlement is a very tricky situation. Okay, it is better than the original solution of not doing anything. Just wait for something. Hopefully, they don't do anything to that. Remember the political cartoon you see, the pruning one? Maybe it's just a little branch, don't that worry. If they dare to blow up America, then we'll just get those bases in Japan and everything to blow up the Soviet. Remember the pruning political cartoon during the last lesson that I showed you? Okay, it could be like that, so you can choose not to do anything. But of course, something slightly better is that we try to establish some form of peace agreement with them. Now, for peace agreement to work, what is the prerequisite? You must agree. So you must, for peace settlement to work, right, the basis is that you must be friends. Are they friends? Not friends, huh? Soviet and Americans are not friends. On top of that, for peace agreement to work, what is the other prerequisite other than friendship? Would you sign an agreement with another person if you have nothing to gain out of it? If you ask the Soviet, I want to sign a peace agreement with you, what do you think the Soviet will want? What do you think the Soviet will want? Huh? What do you think the Soviet will want? Huh? Control over Berlin. Why Berlin? Not Berlin. We're not talking about Berlin now. Okay, but around the same idea. What do you think the Russians will want? They want some benefit. What type of benefit do you think they want? Okay, they want some control. So what type of control do you think they will want? They want to take over the world. So do you think America will allow that? So there must be some form of benefit. And these are the benefits, interestingly, that the Americans are not going to give. On top of that, Russia will also want America to do something. Perhaps you don't desert Cuba anymore. Do you think America will allow that to happen? That means that you let communism grow in Cuba. It's just like a little, just like what Mr. Mark Wu always like to say, a fly flying around him. Are the Americans happy to have that fly flying around him all over every day? No. So, peace settlement is a possibility, but will it work? It will not work. Because, first, the implication is that US will not agree to term. Whatever term, do you think the Soviet will say? Can you imagine if the Americans ask the Soviet, let's have a peace agreement? The Soviet say, okay, no. Do you think that will happen? No, it will never happen because they will definitely demand for certain things. And the Americans will never agree. So this option, sad to say, is a viable option, but to the Americans, this is not the right option for them. So what other options are there available? International pressure. Okay, I'm very basic part up. You all know about the airstrike. Let's do international pressure. What are international pressure are you going to talk about? Okay, international pressure in the form of the United Nations. Okay, Suresh, what do you think? Do you think it's possible? You are the one saying that we can do international pressure. What do you expect them to do? Correct? This is what you want to do. Can this be possible? What if the Russian refuse to comply? If the Russian says, sorry, I'm not complying. Okay, so if Russians don't comply, we are still going to end up to correct? We are now it's a game of blood, it's a game of death. Okay? If the Russian refuse to comply to the international pressure, we're still back to square one again. Now you realize being a president is not easy. That doesn't seem to be a good solution at all. What other solution is possible? Yes. Okay, stop the weapons from coming in. Okay. Okay, that is what the American can stop the weapon from coming in. Okay. What is the risk of a situation like this? If again, if USSR don't comply, what will happen? War III is still going on. So, all the options are either going to lead to self-destruction of the American if they don't do anything, or whatever things that they do are going to push them closer to war. World War III. No choice, what? There's no other choice that's available for them. Either decide that, okay, I'll just wait for the bombs, the missile to come into America and then blow me up, or if whatever I do, I will result to a possibility of war. So there is a very big risk for the Russian, for the American. Okay? Now, with that in mind, all these options seemingly, other than you go straight ahead to do World War III, which is go airstrike, you are only left with all these other options. Either international pressure, try to stop the weapons from coming in. Okay? At the end of it, okay, Kennedy actually adopted one of them. And he was crossing his fingers, hoping that the Russians will not want to risk World War III. That was the only thing he was begging. Yes. Okay, why was USSR so bold? Very simple. First of all, it's now a new leadership, and that is Khrushchev. Khrushchev was under a lot of pressure at home by the so-called the hardliners. Okay, we call them the hardliner communists. These are the people who are die-hard communists who want Khrushchev to do something about it. On top of that, Kennedy was a very young president. So he wanted to push him and see how fast he can press. Therefore, they adopted something like this. So it is a game of that. See who dare. Okay, so like I mentioned to you, these were some of the strategies that the Russians, the Americans will adopt. And one of them was actually what Kennedy did. Now, what I need you to do over the weekend is to read through your activity numbers 5, and I want you to answer the question. Okay, answer the question. The other thing that I want you to take a look at is on page 4, when there was a speech that was made by Kennedy on October the 22nd. Okay, October the 22nd. that was the last ditch attempt by Kennedy to try to stop Khrushchev from continuing his act of madness to try to provide the Cubans with weapons to destroy the Americans. Okay, so what I need you to do is to complete this, okay, and read up your notes on this to give you a better idea, and then at the end of it, you will also see the strategy. Next lesson, I will summarize the strategy, and then we will go into the last part of our lesson where we will debate who actually won the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so that will be happening in the next lesson. Okay, any questions?